Hello. Dick, how are you?
Good.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Start in a few minutes, wait for more people to come on.
Epstein.
Don't hear audio.
Good morning or good afternoon, good evening.
Good evening, good afternoon.
Yeah.
Israel, it's good to see you, Israel. Mr. Gortz, do you hear me? I don't hear you.
Now, can you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Okay.
It's an honor to have you part of the class again. Welcome back.
Mr. Gabstein.
How are you, Mr. Gortz?
Excellent.
Been a while. Now I can finally hear you. I put my earpieces in. I would ask you.
Does everybody have the copy of PDF?
Yep.
Okay, because what I posted on the email today is missing a few pages. So if I'm going to post a link on the chat, hopefully you can copy that link and then it will work. 1 second.
Says chat disabled.
Yeah, I'm in. This is good.
Okay.
I think I've got it on my.
We're about to start. I'm putting in the chat a link. Can you see the link?
Yeah.
Can you click on the link?
What's the link?
Okay. Got it.
Clicked on the link. What do we have?
Okay.
Those who didn't get the email with the PDF, check the link in the chat and it will download the PDF for you. Otherwise, I will also share the PDF as we go. We're going to share the text. Just give me one more minute. I'm going to grab something. I'll be right back.
Then to continue. All right. Continue.
Okay. A lot of background noise. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to mute everyone.
Okay.
Sholem,
I'm
Sholem,
sorry. Yes.
I didn't get your email.
Check in the chat now. Do you see the chat?
Yeah, but I cannot get to my computer if you don't send me
Okay.
email. That's why I always ask. If I have email, I get on computer. If I don't, I am on the phone. On the phone, I cannot open anything.
I see. Okay. Well, we'll share it on the phone, on the text, and later on I'll send you a copy. It's not that important. I want to welcome everyone to the. We're going to start the class. I want to welcome everyone to this course. I'm going to meet everyone. If you have a question or we will take questions, and you also can in chat. You can text in the chat. Some of you the Zoom is new. Some of you are more used to it. It is a wonderful way to connect with others. We also streaming live on Facebook, where many others are joining in. I see some new faces, so I want to welcome you to our classes. So we're gonna mute everyone at this point, and I'll make a blessing on the water. L'chaim on water. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvaro. All right, welcome everyone. By the raise of hands, anybody here have studied Pirkei Avot? Or some of it? All right, many of you, some of you, great. Pirkei Avot. Before we get into the text, I'm going to give a little background what it is. Pirkei Avot translates the Pirkei, since translation is chapters. Avot is from the word Av. Av is a father, like Abba. Avot are fathers in plural. In English, it was translated the ethics of our fathers. Who are the fathers? So the fathers here refers to the sages, not just the fathers as fathers of parents, but sages who gave us those timeless teachings. So when was this written? We have to go back in Jewish history. So as you all know, that the Jewish people left Egypt 3,300 years ago in the year 2448 in the Jewish calendar, where we are now at 5,780. And the Jews are in the desert for 40 years and come into Israel under the leadership of Joshua. In the desert, the first 7 weeks in the desert after they left Egypt, they received the Torah, the written Torah, the Ten Commandments, the tablets, all the details of the written Torah that we have today in the scroll were received by Moses on the mountain. And for the next 40 years, he was teaching the written Torah and all the interpretations of the Torah, what we refer to the oral Torah. Not just interpretation, but also the expansion, the elucidation of the laws, of the stories. So I'm giving this really in a nutshell, because that will make another course. What is the written Torah? What is the oral Torah? How was the transmission? So I'm giving you the crash course on it. So God decided that he wants to give us his wisdom, the Torah, in 2 tracks, so to speak, the written and the oral. Why is there a need for two? Why is not enough for one? Because when you have something just in writing, it is always up for interpretation. How do you interpret the writing? You always need to have the authors, kind of got to ask the author, what did you mean by what you have written? God, who dictated the words of the Torah, the written Torah, to Moshe, taught Moshe on the mountain and the 40 years throughout the desert, all the details and the story behind the stories of the written Torah. He specifically did not want it to be written down. It had to be transmitted orally from generation to generation. And our Mishnah begins, this Mishnah begins very briefly how Moshe received the Torah at Sinai and he gave it over to the next generation, to Joshua, and Joshua gave it to the next generation. It went from generation to generation. Every leader, there was typically a king and there was a leader, a teacher. Once they entered Israel, the teacher, the leader, the Nasi at the time had to transmit the oral Torah to the next generation. Now we're going to jump. About 500 years, once they're in the land of Israel, comes the times of the kings. We meet King Saul, King David, his successor, and then after King David died, famously King Solomon. King David starts the construction of the first temple. I'm going to show you a timeline of Jewish history on the screen. Okay. All right, it's a little small, but maybe at the end I can email you this this paper. It was not part of the booklet, but here you can see the Jewish year on the top left corner. The year is 2448. The secular year is 1313 BCE. Is the event is the giving of the Torah through Moses. He gets the 10 Commandments, 630 commandments throughout the 40 years. And Moshe begins teaching the oral law. Really, the focus here is on the oral law for the purpose of this class. And then you go down in all the biblical personalities. We know we have the 5 books of Moses, and then we have the prophets, the kings. In total, they add 19 books of scripture, of prophets and scripture, a total of 24 books, the 19 books of prophets and the 5 books of Moses, which together is the combination of what we call the written Torah, the Tanakh. Tanakh stands for 3 letters. Tanakh, Taf is Torah, Nun is Nevi'im, the prophets, and the Chaf is for Ketubim, which stands for the scripture, like the book of Psalm, the book of Ruth, the book of Lamentation, etc. And here you see the time period that the written Torah, it took for the written Torah from the beginning, was in the year 1313 BCE at the giving of the Torah, and it ended with during the end of the first temple period. We're going down here to the 879 BCE to around 423, which was the era of the kings. You have King Saul, King David, King Solomon. And King Solomon builds the first temple in Jerusalem. The temple stands for 420 years, and then it's destroyed by the Babylonians, led by King Nebuchadnezzar, who exiles the Jews into Babylonia in the year 423 BCE, in the Jewish year 3338. Okay. And forgive me if I'm going fast, because I'm basically just want to give you a slice of how this looks like. The Jewish people, so what happens between the first temple period and the second temple period? There are only 70 years. Most Jews find themselves in Babylonia, which is in Persia, Iraq, Iran of today. And we have the story of Purim, of Haman and Esther, Queen Esther, at the end of the 70 years. They, as we know the story of Purim, Jews celebrate Purim. after Haman tried to kill them. And as a result, Queen Esther, who's married to the Persian king Ahasuerus, have a child, Darius, and when he takes over the reign, he allows the Jews to return to Israel to rebuild their second temple through Ezra and Nehemiah. At that point, a new era enters. The era of prophets ends. The very last prophets at the time were like Jeremiah, Isaiah, they witnessed the destruction of Zechariah. They witnessed the destruction of the first temple. But as you can see, the era of prophecy ends in the beginning of the beginning of second temple period. Okay, up until that point, again, there was a system, the written Torah, the Torah scrolls we have, and the oral Torah that was only taught from teacher to student. It was not permitted to be written down. What happens second temple period? In the second temple period, they started to realize that the Jewish people are not necessarily going to always be together as one unit in Israel. As they just experienced their first exile, and as the prophets already told them, eventually they will be exiled. They figured we need to really ensure that Jewish teaching, the oral Torah, stays intact forever. So what happened was that the great sages at the time, mainly the names many of you are familiar or heard before, are Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shimon, Hillel, and Shammai, who are the leaders, who are the teachers, the sages, who are many of them part of the courts, the judges. They are starting slowly to debate the oral Torah. Now, what happens with the oral Torah is there is many debates because he heard it that way and they heard it that way. And within the oral Torah, there is not just how they heard it from the teacher, but there are systems of how to derive laws, how to interpret and apply the laws that come up. In every generation, there are new scenarios, new laws, new situations that come up. There is a system within the oral Torah how you apply the written words and the laws to new situations. So what happens is the sages get into many debates, and the beauty is that those debates are starting to be written down. And mainly towards the end of Second Temple period. And then, unfortunately, Second Temple, 410 years later, after it was rebuilt, gets destroyed by the Romans. And right in the middle of the Second Temple period, we have the story of Hanukkah. You see over here, in the year 140, we have the story of Hanukkah. But then we have the Greek kings. Alexander the Greek comes into power. We have the whole debate with the Sadducees and the Pharisees who rejected the oral Torah altogether, which makes for another fascinating historical conversation. And we get introduced to the Tanaic era, which is mainly Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yochanan, towards the end of the Second Temple period, which is being destroyed by the Romans, led by Titus, in the year 70. Now, what happens is, where are the Jews after destruction? Many were killed. Many are being exiled back into Babylonia. Many haven't even come back from Babylonia, from the first temple. Babylonia, Iran, are the oldest Jewish communities outside of Israel, because even after they rebuilt the Second Temple period, a big pocket of Jews remained living in, it was called the Golden Medina, like we have America, that was called the Golden. Israel was a poor country. Persia was rich, was wealthy. They didn't want to necessarily go back to just because there was a temple and was spiritual. They said, we'll send some money, we'll send charity to Israel. We are living in our America, our comforts. which was a blessing, because after the second temple was destroyed, many Jews went back or went to Babylonia and already had roots of Jewish communities, of the infrastructure, of synagogues, and mainly what is the most important institution in Judaism, in addition to a synagogue and a mikveh, is the yeshiva, of the academies. And in the those academies became world famous. The academies in Babylonia, today's Iraq. So when and there they started to write down what we call the Mishnah. It was Rabbi Yehuda, Judah the Prince, here in the year 189, started to collect all the debates and opinions of the great sages of the Tanakh era, writing them. He wrote the Mishnah. The Mishnah was divided into 6 different sections, going through the majority of the commandments, neatly organized in different categories. You have a category for, you have attractive for the laws of Shabbat, attractive the laws of Pesach, the laws of Rosh Hashanah. You have the civil discussions, the civil law, the famously Baba Kama, Baba Metzio, all those discussions of liability, of injury law, ownership laws. Those were beautifully put together in a Mishnah, however, in a very, very condensed version. In other words, it would say like this, for example, the Mishnah of Sukkah starts like this. How tall can a sukkah be? They asked in the academy. All right, one rabbi says 20 amot. One rabbi says 10 amot. Doesn't say why each one had their opinion. It just says what was their opinion. But mostly it's always a debate. Now within the debate there is a rule whose ruling we follow. So after the Mishnah was kind of put together, the sages who came out of the Second Temple period, who went to Babylonia, we now introduce you to the Amoraic period here in the year 200. Over here, in the year 200 CE to 500 CE, it was a rich 300 years of Jewish teaching, of Jewish study. Although they were in exile and they just witnessed the destruction, but one thing they remained strongly was in their study, and not just the study, but in the teaching, making sure those teaching remains for generations to come. And you get introduced to over here you see the Babylonian scholars and the Israeli scholars. For example, famously Rav Shmuel, Rabbi Yosef, Rava, and Abaya. And in Israel, meaning there were Jews who stayed and remained in Israel even after destruction, famously Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Kahana, Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Zera, Rabbi Asi. They took apart every Mishnah, and on every Mishnah they had the entire academy argue back and forth. So why did Rabbi Akiva say so? Why did Rabbi Shimon say this? And they would have to go and dig deeper and bring different proofs from different sources, the logic, it was constantly you get into the discussions, and every discussion was literally beautifully written out. Hence you have the Talmud. So the Talmud is what's the English word? The writing of the report of almost sometimes verbatim of what was the discussions amongst the sages. So so the oral Torah took a form in writing, but there is no oral Torah exact that this is the oral Torah. The oral Torah basically is found within the Mishnah and the Talmud. That's in very precise where Mishnah and Talmud comes from. Till today, the Mishnah and the Talmud are the foundation of understanding our Torah. Without the oral Torah, you cannot understand the written Torah. And for sure, without the written Torah, you cannot understand the oral Torah. It goes hand in hand together. So till the last 2,000 years, our great sages and scholars and Jews have always studied. It was not studying and Torah was not reserved for the scholars. It was everybody had to. It was an obligation, and it still is an obligation that we study Torah. Everybody according to their level. That's why the oldest school system is the yeshiva starting in Babylonia. I once met with an elected official, and we talked about education, and I said that we Jews we have the oldest education system. Think about to us today, it's accepted that everybody goes to school, right? But before 100 years ago, not everybody, most people didn't go to school. It was for the you had to be from the elite or from the smart people. In Judaism, there was always a obligation, not so much an obligation, it was part of Jewish life to have a yeshiva, to have a cheder, to go to school to learn and study Torah. Hence, we've given the Talmud and the Mishnah through the last 2,000 years. We have been studying it and debating it, and this goes down this line of great Jewish scholars throughout history, famously Rashi, who many of them went to Europe, to Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Sephardic. We have the Sephardi rabbis in Spain, in Morocco, and going throughout the ages here till about 400 or 500 years ago, when they codified the laws, called the Shulchan Aruch, when Rabbi Yosef Kaira wrote the Shulchan Aruch, where he codified the law. He took, mainly Maimonides, Rambam was part of, setting the foundation to take this, what we call the Yam Shel Talmud, the ocean of the Talmud, which is so large. It takes, many of you know that there's a cycle called Daf Yomi, where people study a page of the Talmud a day. So if you study a page, and by the way, just to show you what a page looks like, page. This is one famous page of the Talmud. It's not half a page. It goes like this. The other side, they considered one, and the other side as one page. We look at it as two pages. They consider it as one page. So every day there are thousands of Jews who study a page of the Talmud. It takes them over 7 years. If you study every day a page, which is really 2 pages, it takes 7 years to study the entire Talmud. But what's amazing is that the Talmud today has been translated in so many languages, in not just translated, but explained, like I just showed you, for example, the Art Scroll Talmud, which is a fascinating work that was worked in the last 30 years, complete set of the Talmud, the 70 tractates. It's something that I strongly encourage each of you to explore. Now that I did this long introduction, how do we get to the Pirkei Avot? Before I get to Pirkei Avot, I'm going to quickly unmute everybody. If you have a question, you can ask. So this becomes a little bit more interactive. Anybody with questions? Yes, Israel.
One of the questions I have recently heard elsewhere, and then I thought, gee, do I know an answer? I'm not sure. Everyone says, okay, we have on Shavuos is the anniversary of giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. But the only thing that was given on Mount Sinai were the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 Commandments. Where comes the whole Torah to be given on that day?
That's an excellent question. So the giving of the Torah, was 7 weeks after they left Egypt. So the birth of the Jewish nation started at the Exodus, when they left Egypt. But when they were more of a people, they were the Israelites. They were not yet really a nation. They were taken out of Egypt, but there was a covenant that the Jews finally became the Jewish nation. And that was at the moment that God came down came down to the mountain and gave them the Torah. So the Torah is not, the Ten Commandments were not just the Ten Commandments per se, but was the connection, that merging of heaven and earth, not only for the Jews, meaning not only for the Jews as the Jews becoming the Jewish people, but there was a cosmic change that God has now bridged heaven and earth, that now we have the ability to take his wisdom that he shared with the world and take that and use it to elevate the world. You know, there's a famous saying that up until Sinai, there was a separation of heaven and earth. Heaven and earth did not mix really much. There were people and there was the spiritual realm. So that there was this fusion that started at Sinai. Within the Ten Commandments now, the word Ten Commandments, you said earlier in Hebrew is what? Aseret HaDibrot. But what does Dibra mean?
Speaking, 10 things that were talked, that were
Exactly.
spoken.
Spoken, exactly. It says there are the 10 sayings, right? Not commandments. And a commandment is a mitzvah. It's not called Aserot HaMitzvot. It's called Aseret HaDibrot. Without going into the length of what happened exactly there, but what Hashem was basically, if you look, the Ten Commandments, and some people think that 613 is a big. I only keep to the 10 Commandments, right? I don't keep to the 6. Rabbi, I just do the 10. I don't do the 613. I always enjoy that because then I ask them, "Can you name me the 10 Commandments?" and maybe 3 or 4, but. And so when it comes to Shabbat, so how's the keeping Shabbat working out? But the point is not to God forbid, not making fun of the people. But my point is everything has depth and there's clear understanding of what it is, but we can never just read it on the surface. So 10 sayings include all the 613 commandments. God included in the 10 sayings. These are categories. If you go through all the 600 commandments, each one will fall into another category. For example, laying tefillin, right, which men put on every day, is what's the purpose of laying tefillin? It is a demonstration of my faith in Hashem. I put the box by my arm to dedicate my heart, which is next to the heart, which is seat of the emotion, put it by my brain. So what is that? That is an expression of the first commandment: believe in one God. I believe in Hashem, and so on and so on. So that's one. Number 2. Israel, and sorry for the long answer. If you count,
no, keep going.
If you count if you read the 10 Commandments, read how many commandments are there in the Torah? 613. How many rabbinic commandments are there in the Torah? When I say rabbinic, I'm talking the 80s, what the sages instituted. How many?
A lot. I don't know.
No, not at all. Not at all. You'll be surprised. There are only 7. Only 7. Yeah. I'm not talking about rules. I'm talking about commandments. For example, reading the Megillah, lighting menorah on Hanukkah is a rabbinical commandment. It was given much later, right? Hanukkah happened much later. But when you light the menorah, you make a blessing. What blessing do you do? Baruch atah Adonai Elokeinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, Lord, King of the universe, Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, who you have commanded me lahadlik ner Chanukah, to light the light of the Chanukah. Really? Sinai, God, you gave us the commandments at Sinai. That was 2,000 years earlier, before Chanukah came around. Huh? So same thing with Purim. Same thing with washing hands. You wash your hands before Hamotzi. You make a blessing. Asher kiddushanu al netilat yudayim. There's no mitzvah in the Torah to wash your hands. It's a rabbinic mitzvah. Lighting candles Friday night. Rabbinic mitzvah. Lahadlik ner shel Shabbat Kodesh. These are 7 rabbinic enactments that the Torah, Hashem says at Sinai, that I am giving the power to the rabbis, all right, to the rabbis to enact laws, commandments, and once they enact the law, it will be as if I have commanded it. Okay, and you gotta listen to your rabbi. You hear that? Now, obviously, again, these are not rabbis of today. Not
This
even
is gone.
not even Rashi. No, only the sages at the times of the temple had the power to enact 7 more mitzvahs. And again, it makes a whole for another fascinating course. I'm going completely off. Point is 613 plus 7 is 620 commandments. If you go and count the words, how many words are there in the 10 commandments? 620. All right. Okay.
Tell me,
I'll stop.
tell me it's 620.
Huh? I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
620.
Okay. Well, let's go 620 words in the
Audio is breaking up.
Yeah, 620 in the 10 Commandments. 620 words are found if you read the Hebrew, not the English. Read the original Hebrew in the Torah. You find 600. Go count. Okay, moving back. Let's get to Avot, right? Sandy, I don't hear you. You asking something? I can't hear you.
I don't think you answered his question. What he said was, at Mount Sinai, the 10 Commandments was given. How do you say that the Torah was given at Mount Sinai?
Okay.
Was that
Thank
the
you.
question?
Yes, thank
I
you,
mean,
thank you.
That was
Thank
the
you.
question.
Thank you.
And I
you're
have a
right.
lot of 620 this and 620 that, but I don't see where the Torah was given at Mount Sinai. And also, many things happened after Mount Sinai that Moses certainly had no experience with. So, all right, that was my interpretation of your question.
Okay, thank you. Because and Israel's question was why we're celebrating Shavuot, the giving of the Torah, when the Torah was not given yet complete, correct? That was his question. So the answer, to finish the answer, in essence, the Torah was not giving in completion on Shavuot. That's correct. It took 40 years to finish writing the 5 books of Moses. The 613 commandments were elaborated throughout the 40 years to the Jewish people. But in God's mind, infinite mind, all the 613 commandments were already included in the 10 commandments, but it took them 40 years or 40 days on the mountain that Moshe was with Hashem, that Hashem taught him all the details. That took him 40 years to teach. But my point was that Shavuot, we celebrate the bond, the details to follow. All right, moving on. Let's get to Avot. Let's get to Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our fathers. So, the rabbis decided that throughout the Talmud and the Mishnah, they're discussing all the laws. They should also set aside a tractate where they discuss morals and values, mainly in interpersonal relations. How a person should conduct himself to others, how a person should conduct himself to Hashem, to God, how a person should conduct himself within the families and the communities. And they got together, so to speak, and each one came and they discussed what value do you want to share that should be written in, and they named it Avot, the teachings of our fathers. Initially, there were 5 chapters of Pirkei Avot. Then after it became a custom that Jews study Pirkei Avot between the weeks of Pesach and Shavuot. So you have 7 weeks. Between 7 weeks, you have 6 Shabbats between Passover and Shavuot. Each Shabbat is one chapter that should be studied Pirkei Avot. In preparation for the holiday Shavuot, we celebrate the giving of the Torah. And as you know, just like the Jews were taken out of Egypt, they were slaves, and they needed 7 weeks to prepare themselves for this great gift. The Torah had to be. One second. I'm going to mute. They had to be not only spiritually prepared, but also mentally, and how they had to treat each other. They had to learn how to live with each other, because going from slavery to become a free people is a transition. So similarly, every year when we celebrate Pesach, our freedom, we want to prepare ourselves for the giving of the Torah on Shavuot. So anyway, so we have 6 weeks, so they had to add another chapter to make it 6 chapters. So in Pirkei Avot, you find 6 chapters. Today we are going to focus on 1, maybe 2 Mishnah in chapter 1. So it will be impossible for us to study all 6 chapters in 6 weeks. So this, what we're going to do is we're going to pick the JLI prepared this course. They will pick 1 Mishnah, 1 or 2 Mishnahs, and we'll elaborate on that with something that we find also in the Talmud. Because remember, the Mishnah is written in short. The Talmud many times will elaborate what it says in the Mishnah. However, when it comes to law, the sages were in a good. They were excited to elaborate every law from the Mishnah. They had to. It was important. There is no Talmud on the Mishnah of Pirkei Avot, so it is really the same. There's no Talmud. So when we study Talmud, when it comes to Avot, we study the Mishnah. So I'm sorry for confusing you, but basically we are studying the Mishnah of Avot, and we're going to study 1 Mishnah from each chapter. In the copies that you got, those who got the full copies, you will have a printout of the entire Pirkei Avot, of the entire chapter, and on your own, I encourage you to read it and study it. Also, many, many good books. Mainly the Rabbi was very into Pirkei Avot. He would, over the 40 years of his leadership, elaborate every year on a Mishnah on certain chapters, and they put together volumes of his writings and speaking on the deeper explanations and how to make it personalize it. They translated in English. This is a good book. You can get it also online. Pirkei Avot by Kohas Publication. In it has like 1 Mishnah, but then it has many, many insights into each of the Mishnah. All right, my friends, let's delve in. Today we are going to do Mishnah number 6. In your books, it will be text 1 of the first Mishnah. And by the way, I forgot one more thing. After Shavuot, which we celebrated about 2 weeks ago, the cycle of studying the Mishnah continues in many communities till Rosh Hashanah. So the whole summer, Jews every Shabbat is studying 1 chapter. So when you finish 1 cycle, we start again. So because Shavuot this year was 2 days, it was Friday and Shabbos, and on Shavuot we did not start the cycle itself. So the first Shabbos after Shavuot was this past week. So this past week, Jews around the world started the cycle again with chapter 1. So today we're studying chapter 1, and next week hopefully we'll continue with chapter 2. It gives you enough time during the week and Shabbat that you can study the rest. Text 1, Mishnah 6. Right, and I'm for those who don't have a copy, I'll share the screen so you can see. All right. I'll read it in Hebrew slow, and then we'll translate. Here, Yehoshua ben Parachia Omer, Yehoshua the son of Parachia, would say, Asay lecha rav, knei lecha chaver, ve'havedon es kol ha'adam lekaf zchus. Joshua the son of Parachia would say, he said 3 things. Make yourself a teacher, acquire yourself a friend, and judge every person to the side of merits. All right? So, 3 teachings. How to relate to others. Number 1 is to whom we look up for guidance. Who do we look up for guidance? For that, you make yourself a teacher. Number 2, our relationships with our peers. Acquire yourself a friend. And number 3, how to relate to others who are inferior to us. By how? By judging every person in the side of merits. So let's focus on the first one. What says, Asay lecha rav. Make yourself a rav. What is a rav? A rav is the word for rabbi. What does a rabbi mean? So rabbi means a teacher, or in other translation, rav is a master. Not just a teacher, but also a master, meaning, so rabbi comes from the word of moreh. We know moreh is a teacher in Hebrew, right? The word Torah also means to teach. The word Torah comes from the word of moreh, to teach. Torah is a book of teaching. The job of the rabbi is to teach, not to speak long sermons, rather to teach. That's the job of a rabbi. But or to be a master. But my master, what does it mean to be a master? It means that somebody that can be on top of you, somebody you choose to guide you in your spiritual journey. So, but and the question is, Judaism puts a big emphasis, as I said earlier, on study of Torah. Right? We always had yeshivot, and the emphasis is not that the rabbi is the one that knows, but everybody has an obligation to study and to know. And there's a big emphasis to study on your own, to acquire the understanding. So why is there an emphasis on having a master on top of you to guide you when it takes a little bit away of your own individual journey of trying to acquire? And really the point is, we need to have a combination of both. You have to study Torah on your own, meaning you have to use your own individuality in your journey, in your spiritual journey. But because we are not we are not objective, we are blinded by ourselves, we need to have somebody who can guide us. And the word in Hebrew is asay lecha rav. Asay, which translates make yourself a teacher. We'll get back to soon why it is saying make yourself a teacher and not to choose a teacher. There's a difference to choose or to make. We'll see soon. But first, on the concept of not being objective over yourself, how easy it is that if you don't have a rabbi or a mentor that can be objective to guide you. There's a classic story in the Talmud here in text 2. The story in text 2 in the Talmud of the Tractate Ketubah says like this. I'm going to skip the Hebrew and I'll read over here. A man once brought the gift of the first fleece to Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha. Rabbi Yishmael asked him, was there no Kohen to whom to give it between where you came from and here? The first fleece had to be given to the Kohen. And this guy was traveling, and he brought along with him the gift that he was supposed to give to the Kohen, and he wanted to give it to the Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha. And Rabbi Yishmael, who was the presiding judge in this town, said, why are you giving it to me? Didn't you have anybody else to give it to in your own town? So the man replied, I have a legal issue with someone. So I thought that since I'll be seeing you in any case, I'll bring it to you, right? Why? He's the judge. Bribery. So Rabbi Yishmael said to him, I'm disqualified from hearing your case. He also refused to accept the gift from him. Okay, but it doesn't end here. So Rabbi Yishmael recused himself from presiding over the case. He did not even accept the gift. But then Rabbi Shmuel appointed two other rabbis to judge the case. As the person was presenting his arguments, Rabbi Shmuel found himself thinking, if he would argue this point this way and emphasize that point the other way, he would have a better case. He's thinking to himself. Subsequently, Rabbi Shmuel said, see how corrupting a bribe is. I didn't even accept the gift from him. And even if I had, it would have been something to which I am entitled by law. Nevertheless, I was inclined in this person's favor, how much more so one who accepts a bribe. So the story just brings out the point how easy it is to lose objectivity. He didn't even get anything yet, and already he was being biased. So one first indication as a clear instruction when it comes to your own study of Torah, your own spiritual journey, is you need to have a mentor that is objective. He has to be somebody who, he or she has to be somebody who should understand who you are, so you can grow with whatever you're learning and have have a clear path. All right. I said before, the word in Hebrew aseh means to make. Go back over here and it says to make yourself a teacher. So the question is, do you choose your mentor or you make yourself a mentor? By making meaning it is imposed. Your mentor kind of imposes on you. And I can tell you out of my personal experience, I always tried to, and something the Rabbi was very, very passionate, was that every person, no matter what status, must have a mentor. A mentor that is also, as we go to the second part of Knei L'Chachaber, that is also in a sense a friend, meaning he understands you. A mentor that understands you, but he is somebody that you can trust, and you give him kind of the okay to give his unbiased opinion. Why? Because we always want to hear what selfishly we want to hear. But in order to grow, you must have a mentor who can see the bigger picture and objectively tell you sometimes, this is not the direction you should go, and this is how you grow. This takes us to the second part of the Mishnah, to friendship. Acquire yourself a friend. As much as we need as a mentor, we also need good friends. What is a good friend? Why does he acquire yourself a good friend? What's the word acquire? In Hebrew, knei means to buy. Acquire. It's a funny word. So the Rebbe says, knei, acquire, means you have to buy, it costs money. A good friend costs money. What does it mean, costs money? You have to be willing to sacrifice, to give something up for the sake of friendship. But the Mishnah is telling us, if you do so, it's well worth it. How do we know it's well worth it? So let me show you the story here of another sage by the Choni Hamago. The sage name is Choni Hamago. What does Hamago mean? Mago means a circle. He was Choni, the circle maker, circle drawer. He drew a circle, and he got the name Choni Hamago. Why was his name Choni Hamago? Of a famous story that there was no rain in the times of when he was alive. It was a big famine, and many people prayed, and he made a circle around him, and he davened to Hashem, and he said, Hashem, I'm not leaving the circle until it rains. So he was, because he was so dedicated, in a sense, so stubborn, that he prayed so strongly, it started to rain, so his name was given Choni Hamago. But here's a famous story, another famous story that happened to him on famous story in the Tractate of Talmud. Again, I'm trying to explain why does it say acquire? You got to acquire a friend, meaning what is true friendship? In addition, that a friend can tell you sometimes things that even a teacher or a mentor cannot tell you. You all know that, right? But it comes with a price, meaning it requires sacrifice. Let's see text 3 here. All right. All his life, Choni wondered about the meaning of the verse. When God will back the exiles of Zion, will have been like dreamers. Is it possible for a person to sleep and dream for 70 years? How did he get to 70 years? Look at the story. One day he was traveling on the road when he saw a man planting a carob tree. He asked him, how long does it take for this tree to bear fruit? The man replied, 70 years. Do you think that you will live another 70 years? Asked Chani. So the man said, no. The man replied, I found carob trees in the world. Why? Because my ancestors planted them for me. So I too plant them for my children. So Chani sat down to eat, and he got tired, slept, and sleep overcame him. A rocky formation closed him and hid him from sight, and he slept for 70 years. How do you sleep for 70 years? Okay, now you can see it, plastic Talmud, right? It's a Talmud. Now you'll have, Talmud doesn't say what a 70-year mean. How do you sleep for 70 years? You'll have now on the side of Talmud, the commentary of Rashi, the commentary of Tosfos, the commentaries of the Rush, all different commentators giving their logical opinions or something that they may have heard from other sources. What does 70 years mean over here? Just to give you an example, right? Let's read further and see what happens. When he woke, after 70 years, he saw a man gathering the fruit of the carob tree, and he asked him, are you the man who planted the tree? He looked exactly the same, the man that planted the tree 70 years earlier. And the man replied, I am his grandson. Said Choni, this means that I slept for 70 years. He returned home and inquired, where is Choni's son? In other words, where is my son? It's 70 years later, and was told his son is no longer in this world, but his grandson is still living. He said to them, hello, I am your grandfather, I'm Choni the circle drawer. But they did not believe him, because in real life he already died. He went to the study hall. Okay, so now nobody believes him in his home. Where does he go? He goes to the shul, he goes to the yeshiva, he goes to the study hall. He walks in the study hall where he heard the scholar saying, the law is as clear to us as in the days of Chani the circle drawer. They're studying now something that he said 70 years earlier, but he's listening to that conversation. Who, whenever he came to the study hall, would settle for the scholars any difficulty that they had. They were discussing the law, and the Talmud says that Chani Hamagol would always be the one that can solve the issue, solve the difficulty. So he says, Chani says, I'm here, I'm he said. But they did not believe him. Chani was hearted and prayed for death, and he died. Said Rava, this is the meaning of what people say, either companionship or death. If you don't have friends, better to be dead. If you don't have anybody companionship, meaning you have nobody to talk to, if nobody that you can interact with, better to be dead. It's a strange story, right? But it's the last line, brings out this point that friendship is so key in our development. In our development, not only as children, but of course as adults, because remember, we are trying to always to better ourselves, to refine our characters, to be better people. But you need to have a good mentor, and you need to have good friends that you can interact with, that they can tell you sometimes. When he says to buy, means sometimes it costs money. What does it mean? A good friend is somebody who can tell you the truth, even if it hurts sometimes, not in a bad way, in a way that it's constructive criticism because they care. in Chabad philosophy, we're going to see soon, the emphasis of the teaching of Hasidic teaching of the Baal Shem Tov was so much on the mitzvah of loving your fellow. You have a whole new dimension of what loving your fellow means. So once I read somewhere there was a teacher wanted to show what is loving, what is true care for another person. So the teacher said, I overheard two shikayrim, two drunkards in Europe. He said, I was walking by, I heard two drunkards. They were talking to each other in the bar. And one guy says to the other, are you my friend? And the guy says, sure, Max, I'm your friend. He says, no, you're not my friend. Are you my friend? He says, yeah, I'll show you. I'm your friend. He says, you're not my friend. Why do you say so? It's because if you're my friend, you would know what bothers me. That's true friendship. If you're a true friend, good friends, not just people who go, just go play golf and having a good time. That's also good. Many times friendship is very self-serving. What can I get out of the friendship? Right? As long as they conform to my thinking and to my comforts, and they enhance my lifestyle and my thinking, etc., then they're my friends. That's not what a true friend is. A true friend is a person that you bond connected so much that they care about you. You care about them more than you care about yourself, as we're going to see soon, but also that they can tell you, like that's what it said at quiet, they can tell you something, things that is going to cost you, meaning where it's going to cost your comfort, because they'll give you a real advice for life, even if it's uncomfortable. Okay. Which brings us to the third part of the Mishnah, and that is always judge a person, what does it say? Favorably. Let's go back to the Mishnah. And judge every person to the side of merit. Okay. So basically, what does it say? Don't judge, right? Don't judge. It's like the rabbi who gets up in the synagogue and tells everybody, don't judge, don't judge, don't judge, right? Don't judge. He's judging by telling everybody not to judge. But and that's a big thing, right? Not to be judgmental. Why not to be judgmental? Because simply you never know what a person goes through, right? You never know what a person goes through. If we can just be less judgmental, the world will be a much better place. We have a tendency to be judgmental with everybody we encounter. But that's not enough. Because what does it say in the Mishnah? It doesn't say don't judge. Let's read it again. What does it say? And judge every person. Judge doesn't say not to. It says no. You not only should you not judge, you should judge every person to the side of merit. Which means if I see somebody doing something that I disagree with, that is not okay, I shouldn't just not judge them. Oh, maybe they had a bad upbringing, maybe they had a bad day, don't judge them. No, Mishnah says you have to go a step further. You have to judge them on the side of merit. That's taking it a little bit too far. Let's look at a story here in the Talmud, and we'll try to answer with the story. And this will be our last text for tonight. Text 4. Talmud Shabbos, Tractate Shabbos, page 127b. And there he goes. There was once a man who came down from the Upper Galilee and hired himself out to work on the estate of a wealthy landowner in the south for 3 years. When his term ended, it was just before Yom Kippur, he said to his employer, Give me my wages so that I may go home and support my family and children. He worked for 3 years. Finally, he's asking him for his salary, right? I'm sorry, replied his employer. I have no money. All right. How would you respond? Let's see how he responds. In that case, said the worker, pay me with produce. I have no produce, was the reply. Give me land. I have no land. Give me cattle. I have no cattle. Give me pillows and bedding. Give me your schmatzes. Give me something to go home with. Once again, the employer claimed that he didn't have any. So the worker slung his finger over his shoulder and went home with a sorrowful heart. After the festivals, after Sukkot, his employer took the man's wages in hand, arrived at his former employee's home with 3 laden donkeys, one loaded with food, another with drink, and the third with various delicacies. After they had eaten and drunk, he gave him the wages he owed. Tell me, he then asked, when I told you that I had no money, what did you think? The worker replied, I thought, perhaps you were presented with a very lucrative business opportunity, and you invested all your money in it. And when I said I had no cattle, what did you think? He said, I thought that perhaps all your cattle were hired out to the farm to other farmers. And when I said I had no land, I thought that perhaps it was leased. When I said I had no produce, what did you think? So he said, I thought perhaps they are not tied, meaning when you have produce, as long as you don't tie the produce to give it to the Kohen, you're not allowed to touch the produce. You have to first give tithe before you can have any benefit of the produce back in temple times. So and when I thought maybe you didn't tithe them yet, so you said I have no produce. And when I said, he goes on, when I said I can't even pay you with pillow and beddings, with shmatas, what did you think then? He said, I thought that perhaps you have taken a vow consecrating all your possessions to the holy temple. There is a concept you can make a vow that all my possessions belong to the temple. At that moment, I made such a vow, all my belongings I am allowed to touch anymore. I have to give it to the temple. I swear to the employer, that's exactly what happened. I vowed away all my property because of my son, Hyrcanus, who became a corrupt man who would not occupy himself with the Torah. He was hoping he's going to give tzedakah, he will turn around. But then I went to the rabbis and they absolved me of my vows. Meaning a person can make a vow. If it's a vow between you and God, not a vow that they promise somebody money and then you go to rabbi and the rabbi can annul the vow. It doesn't work this way. We all annul vows, by the way, once a year. Do you know when? Anybody know when? Unmute. Unmute. All right. Who wants to say? When do we?
Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur. Exactly. What prayer? Huh?
Kol Nidrei.
Kol Nidrei. What is Kol Nidrei? Kol Nidrei means all my vows. Sorry, all my promises I made to Hashem, may they be nullified. Who's nullifying them? The congregation. We appoint the congregation as the rabbis, that they have the power to absolve me from my vows, but only vows between me and Hashem. In other words, if we have made promise to God, Rabbi Hashem, I'm going to be a good Jew, I'm going to go to synagogue every Shabbos, right? And it didn't work, it didn't happen so much. In Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, we try to untie our commitments. But again, it's between you and God, not between you and men, just for another conversation. So he says, okay, so I went to the rabbis, absolved me of my vows, and asked for you, just as you judge me to the side of merit, so may God always judge you to the side of merit. So this worker went so far to not only not to judge his boss, but to judge him favorably. And that was just a classic story to show us how far we have to go. But what does that mean in reality, in practicality? As I said, this class is ancient wisdom for modern times. How do we apply this in today's very we live in times where there's so much fightings and everybody has an opinion and imagine politicians today would just adopt this line. How will they will never get elected, but that's an unfortunate thing. We're living in times where there's so much fighting, and we cannot, today it's become so much apart that if the other person does not, forget about which party, doesn't think about the same way, doesn't speak the same way as I do, I don't want to talk to him, he's not my friend, I want nothing to do with them, I want to cut them out of my life. And it becomes very, very, unfortunately, very, very negative. So, the Mishnah challenged us to go and focus, to judge them, not only not to judge them on the side of merit. Why on the side of merit? So we all know that every human being was given a soul. Every human being is created in God's image. Every human being was born with a pure soul, pure with positivity, with the potential to do only good, to do so much good. Every human being. By the very fact that we're humans. And unfortunately, we also have a evil inclination that challenge our drive to do good. So when a person, but at the end of the day, every human has that potential to do good. We never sign off a human being. So when a person, we want to train ourselves to look at every person not just on their action, but on their, who are they as a soul, as a potential, that the beauty that they have within them. And we know, as a rule, a person who has fallen very low is an indication that they have tremendous potential. Because personally, a person should always say, God doesn't give me a challenge I cannot. God doesn't give a challenge to a person that they cannot handle. And that's a rule that we don't tell people. We don't tell that to somebody else. We tell it to ourselves. We all believe that we are on this earth to make a difference. We're on this earth not by mistake. God put us on this planet, and each of us have a specific mission and purpose to fulfill that nobody else can do. Everybody's unique. We all a piece of the puzzle. And without the other person, we are not complete. We're not complete in making this world a better place. That means every person has that potential. I need to train myself to always try to find the good in every person, and not to accept that what they have done that is wrong, that is correct. There's time for there's time for criticism. There's time for telling them that what they've done is wrong and there's consequences. But the approach should be, why do I have to give you a consequence? Why do I need to tell you a criticism? Because I judge you favorably, because I know the beauty that you truly are, the beautiful soul that you have within you. I know your potential. And when we come with that approach, then we're not just rejecting them. Now we're not rejecting them. We actually try to help elevate them. Try to help bring for them to come back to change and fix their ways. That's why the Mishnah says, go as far as judge the other side, to the side of merit. It's not easy. It's very difficult. But that if you train, start with one relationship you're in with. One friend, if it's a spouse, if it's a child, if it's a parent, and try to emphasize that to judge them on the side of merit, and the conversation, they will be much more receptive to listen to you. That's one point. Another point, the third Rebbe of Chabad said, it says in the Torah, love your fellow like yourself, right? What does it say? What does it mean, love your fellow like yourself? He says, loving yourself, we all love ourselves the most. What happens as a result that we love ourselves so much? We obscure our shortcomings. Right? He said, so the Torah says, love your fellow. Just as you love yourself obscures your own failings, so too should your love for your fellow cover up their shortcomings for you. So the difference is the way you are loving yourself, which obscures the shortcomings, also do that to somebody else. Love them and don't emphasize and don't point out on their shortcomings. End up with the story, the previous Rebbe, when he was 4 years old, asked his father, who was the fifth Rebbe, he said, "Father, why is it that God created us with 2 eyes?" Right? Created with 2 eyes. He only gave us one mouth, 1 nose. Why 2 eyes? And I quote, the father told him, there are times when we need to use our right eye and times when we need to use our left eye. When we look at another person, we need to look with a right eye, with affection and empathy. And when we look at ourselves, we need to look with a critical left eye. It also goes the other way around. Our love of ourselves obscures our shortcomings. It goes back to the first 2 parts of the Mishnah, that in order for us to be true to ourselves, we need to have a good mentor and we need to have good friends. And the way we treat our friends, how we judge them favorably, they will also judge us favorably by exposing our shortcomings in a positive way, showing us our potential. And with that, our relationship with Hashem, our relationship with our friends, our relationship with our family, and with ourselves can be in a very healthy way. This is taking one short Mishnah and making it into a very long conversation, but try to take one lesson and incorporate it this week. And as you're going to read the other ones in this chapter, and the many of them, see how these are really pearls of wisdom. Any questions? Everyone's on mute? All right. Any questions?
I'm off mute. Yes, I have a question. One, does this apply to Jewish people who have tremendous guilt about everything? I mean, that's why I don't see that Jewish people definitely obscure their shortcomings, because we all have tremendous guilt. It's a Jewish thing. That's number one. Now, and I was going to say something about the other one, but I'll stay with that one first.
So your question is that the Jewish people
Is
have
it
to-
applicable? Is it really applicable? I mean, do we really obscure our own shortcomings? Do we really obscure our own shortcomings? And do we look at other people and try to judge them harshly when we judge ourselves so beautifully? I don't know if that's quite true. I don't know. I mean, my friends who are Catholics say that they have the same Jewish guilt as the Jews do. So I don't know if that's quite true. And then the second question was in the first, I think it was the first one, where it said you have to be a teacher yourself. I didn't understand that, because it said, I understand have a friend. That part I understood. Judge other people with merit. I understand that. In other words, think positively towards another, towards another human being. But that you should be a teacher.
No,
You become a teacher.
you should acquire a teacher.
But it doesn't say those words. It says,
Make for yourself.
all right,
It says make yourself a teacher.
make yourself a teacher. Make yourself a teacher. Now, considering I'm a teacher, so I might have already fulfilled that. But it doesn't say acquire a teacher, it doesn't say get a teacher, whether that teacher is a positive, in other words, it may be the best teacher in the world, but the words that I'm reading, because I did I read it ahead of this session, say make yourself a teacher.
Okay.
How do you translate that into acquire a teacher?
Make yourself,
No.
again,
No,
sometimes the Hebrew and the English don't translate super accurately.
So in other words, it's a difficulty with the translation.
I would translate acquire a teacher, not
Okay.
make it, acquire a teacher for yourself.
Okay, I'll cross off the words in
For
English.
yourself.
Rabbi,
Okay.
we
Yes.
have the Pirkei Avot in Spanish, and in
Yeah.
our version, it does says, find yourself a teacher. So I think it's more an accurate translation. Find yourself.
There's another, that's
Fine.
right, thank you.
Acquire.
And Sandy, there's another interesting interpretation. Kanei also means a pen in Hebrew, in ancient Hebrew. Your pen should be your teacher, meaning you should write down what you are studying, because as you know, when you write things down, you will remember things.
Better. Mhm.
And if I can add, yes, you also have to be your own teacher. You have to be your own teacher, where it's not enough just to absorb information, but you have to work to acquire information. And by definition, when you acquire information, you're teaching yourself. You can teach a person information, and then you can teach a person skills, how they can pick up the information themselves, right?
Mhm.
That's one of the most important things in education, right? And that's why it's critical that when we study Torah, we don't, in any teaching, but especially when it comes to Torah, not just sharing information, but teach people how to study. They can become their own teachers.
How to think. Mhm.
Absolutely.
And
And
then-
by the way, I want to add one more thing. Again, the oral Torah and the written Torah was given in such a way that it's a partnership, that Hashem didn't just want to force it down our throat. He wanted our own thinking to be engaged in the process of Torah study. And that you'll see in the evolution of Mishnah and Talmud, how for our own mind and Hashem has gifted us, we came up with ideas that were connected. We connected the foundation writings of the Torah to the thinking of our sages and thinking till today. It's very logical, intellectual. It's intellectual stimulating when you study the Talmud. It's not just information. It's mainly how does it make sense, and each one gives their way of thinking. It's critical thinking. And why Hashem wanted that way? Because Hashem wanted us to be partner in creation, partner in His Torah. They didn't want to be here from the mountain down. He wanted us to be part of it. So it goes same thing with a teacher. It's not enough. A good teacher is not somebody. One of the sages said, as much as I teach my students, I learned more from. As much as I acquired from my teachers, I learned more from my students.
Mhm.
Right? All goes
Mhm.
together. That all goes together. And that is a good teacher knows. It's critical. Thank you. Any other questions?
Rabbi, I can say that reading this, and with my knowledge both of Hebrew as my Mama Lashon
Yeah.
and Aramaic, because I did study Talmud, I can only say that there's a slight, how shall I say, difference between my interpretation of text 1 and the English. The English says, make yourself a teacher. Hebrew, aseh lecha rav, means make for yourself. So go find a rav, find a teacher, or make one, but it doesn't say make yourself one. Next, so if you do that, if you find or make a teacher, and if you find or get a friend, okay, so acquire a friend, I agree, then the word veheve is critical. To me, it has one of two meanings. It means if you do these two things, as a result, heve, you will be one who can judge all people according to their merit. Or it could say, for your life, do these first two things and be one who judges. In other words, veheve means either as a veheve, as a result you will be, or ve and have, you should be done. So there are two ways to look at it. Now,
Put them together.
okay.
You not just should be forcefully, you should learn how to be.
Well, yeah, but the bottom line is you find a good rabbi, a good teacher, and get a good friend.
That's
and
difficult.
As a result,
Finding a good rabbi is very hard. I agree with you.
I won't say anything about that. But anyway, as a result, you will be able to judge all people
Yes.
justly, or find a good find a rabbi, and find a good friend, and judge people justly. So
It's a lot. First of all, I want to just also emphasize, it does not necessarily mean a rabbi. Rav really also means a master, mentor, any mentor. So
right.
it's coming from the rabbi, I'm saying this from a rabbi. It does not have to be a rabbi. Should be your mentor. A rabbi should learn.
Self-defense on your.
Yeah, exactly. But but a rabbi has to understand that his mandate is to be a mentor, and to be and to be a good friend, and to judge everybody favorably, which can be very challenging, because as every human. But the beauty is that a good mentor, and every rabbi, that's one thing the Rebbe was. I would say that one of the main ideas the Rebbe left us with, so to speak, 1988, his wife passed away, Rebbetzin passed away, and Rebbe started talking about, in certain language, what will, giving us some direction of after his passing, so to speak. And one of the things he kept emphasizing, every person needs to have a mentor. You can have a Rebbe, but in addition, you need to have a personal friend who is a mentor, and every rabbi and every mentor needs to have a mentor. And that's critical as well. A good rabbi, a good mentor, is when you know that they have a mentor, because then you know that person has some humility to not to think that he or she knows it all, and that they're humble enough to try to have somebody who can give them an objective direction.
So how do you interpret this? Find a mentor, have a good friend, and the third part could be interpreted based on what I just mentioned earlier. Do the first two and the third will follow, or do the first two and the third, just as guidance for your life. And it doesn't say what will follow.
I hear you. I take it as three instructions independently, and each of them will enhance each other.
Okay.
Yes, Sandy. Any other questions?
One other thing.
Yes.
First of all, in the third thing that you read, the guy works for several years. He comes back to his family. He never questions. He never asks why. It's like la-di-da, and he leaves without any money or any possessions, and he goes home. And as at the end, of course, he's rewarded tremendously for not asking any questions, for accepting the situation and thinking positively about his boss. Why was there no need for communication? Why was there no need to ask a question? And why was he given all of these rewards as a result of his not communicating? Is that terrible of me to say that? But
No, that's a good question. It's a great question. And who would accept that so fast, right?
without questioning and thinking so positively about the guy that he has all of these great excuses,
Well, he
and you make
first
him
of all
up in your own
he worked for the
head.
guy for 3 years, so there was a good relationship, obviously, right?
All right,
Um,
granted.
uh, I don't have the answer to that because there's expression on the story. You can't ask really questions. It's a story. It's not necessarily that this is how we expect everybody to act in the first place. And, you would want to have a proper communication between the worker and his boss. And but it's more the lesson that we want to bring out, that this was the point of bringing up the story. But again, to think of times when sometimes people told you something that you had maybe wanted to ask further questions, but maybe you did, or maybe you didn't get the answer. And only later you find out why not, why they couldn't answer, maybe they couldn't share the information at the time. And you had two choices to make at the time. Either you reject it, or you say perhaps there's something that I should trust that person, that there's something positive behind that. Maybe now's not the time. But it's definitely a challenging story, of course. Anybody else with
Okay.
questions before we wrap it up here?
Mhm.
Okay,
Thank
go study your chapter, the whole chapter 1. Next week we'll do chapter 2. And those who want to join further, I want to get a copy. I mailed to those who signed up early enough. Did everybody that signed up got their copy? Good.
Yes.
We'll send out more copies out to those who just signed up and want to continue. We look forward for this journey for the next 6 weeks. Wishing everyone a good Shabbos. Tomorrow at 7 o'clock, we'll be on the same Zoom for a pre-Shabbat service and a sermon and a story by my son. Story. As of you, some of you know that we have started reopening slowly on Saturday morning, with those who feel comfortable coming out with mask. We have with social distancing in the synagogue. We are doing just the service on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock till 12. There's no food, there's no kiddush, so sorry. But I'd love to see. Everybody should be healthy and safe. That's the main thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Laila Tov.
Bye.